It can be hard balancing taking care of kids, senior loved ones, and yourself. Remember, it's okay to ask for help. There's a reason 29 million families have turned to Care.com. Find background-checked sitters, nannies, and senior caregivers who can help with everything from watching kids after school to senior meal prep. Whether you need full-time, part-time, or even occasional help, you can view rates and book highly rated caregivers that fit your budget and schedule. Get the help you need with Care.com.
Millions of people have lost weight with personalized plans from Noom. Like Evan, who can't stand salads and still lost 50 pounds.
Salads generally for most people are the easy button, right? For me, that wasn't an option. I never really was a salad guy. That's just not who I am. But Noom worked for me.
Get your personalized plan today at Noom.com. Real Noom user compensated to provide their story. In 4 weeks, the typical Noom user can expect to lose 1 to 2 pounds per week. Individual results may vary.
My dad works in B2B marketing. He came by my school for career day and said he was a big ROAS man. Then he told everyone how much he loved calculating his return on ad spend. My friends still laugh at me to this day.
Not everyone gets B2B, but with LinkedIn, you'll be able to reach people who do. Get a $100 credit on your next ad campaign. Go to linkedin.com/results to claim your credit. That's linkedin.com/results. Terms and conditions apply. LinkedIn, the place to be, to be.
Pursuing your future doesn't end at 40. In fact, it may mark the beginning of knowing who you are, what you're capable of, and what you really want. But knowing what's next and how to get there can be a challenge, especially when old narratives play on repeat. Liberty Road is here to share stories so that you can consider your possibilities, pursue your purpose, and move into your future with intention. I'm your host, Netta Jones, and we're here to listen, learn, and liberate dreams, one episode at a time. Well, hello, Liberty listeners. Welcome to another episode of Liberty Road. Today, you guys get to hear from Heather Redisch of Adulting101 Masterclass. Did I get it right?
You got it perfectly.
Awesome. And I was excited to get Heather on this podcast because she is digging in deep to some of the questions many of us have about our adulting children. How do we come alongside them? Also, for those of us who are hiring people in this age, how do we better understand how to navigate hiring them, managing them as employers, all the things. So I'm so excited to have you on the show, Heather. Welcome.
Oh, thank you. I'm thrilled to be here.
Oh, good. So first, why don't we just start with what the heck is Adulting101 Masterclass?
So I came up with the name because I feel like the word adulting has become a trending word, if you will, to perhaps the millennial demographic when we're talking about the responsibilities of life, right? And people are sending memes to each other. This is what adulting feels like, or I don't want to adult today. But it really, to me, was an all-encompassing word of, yeah, this is what happens after you graduate college. You have to start to really adult and exercise true independence. And the 101 is part of just this curriculum that I developed to help educate and inform both parents and kids on what that looks and feels like. So that's where the Adulting 101 Masterclass was formed. But overall, it is for kids, parents, employers. I'm trying to educate and inform for those audiences.
I know, because I know a little bit about you, that you have younger kids. So
Yes.
What led you into this space? Where were you coming from that you were like, I've got it. I'm going to create a course for these emerging adults?
So I've been in human resources, talent management for the last 25 years, and a lot of recruiting, a lot of interviewing. And in the last 5 years, I just started noticing this trend or behavior that these young adults who are about to graduate college are having an extra hard time talking. Just communication in general has been more of a challenge because their confidence level seems to not be as high, I would say, as previous generations when I've been interviewing, and those individuals seemed more comfortable. Our generations seem more comfortable talking face to face because that's how we were born and raised.
Yeah.
Versus this current generation who's entering the workforce, they are really uncomfortable with that type of interaction. Not to mention the fact that, and I know this is going to sound crazy, but like even little things like spell check. So I have 3 young kids. Yes, one's going to high school and then middle school and elementary school. And maybe it's different for you. None of my kids have had to take a spelling test in their life.
Yeah.
And I kind of balked at it at the beginning, but people would say, well, they've got spell check. So what are they taking spelling tests for? But there is something about the way college grads now are writing thank you notes and those those just type of communication and proper etiquette that has truly fallen by the wayside. They're not following up as quickly as they should because they're just completely uncomfortable with all of this behavior, all of these different behaviors. It's been just becoming more and more evident to me. Mm-hmm. And in January, I had a conversation with a college grad from Michigan who was graduating early, and we were having a great conversation, but this young professional just was struggling so much in terms of interviewing, how to interview, how to find an interview. They did not find a job on campus, and thank you notes, all the things that I just kind of pointed to. And my heart broke because I thought to myself, I don't know whether your parents are helping you pay for this education from Michigan or you've done it yourself. Whatever it is, this debt that's accrued in terms of your financial debt for college should have done something to prepare you for real life post-college. And there is a massive gap there. There just is. And as colleges have become more and more competitive and more expensive, you would think that embedded or built into their overall curriculum, I don't care what major you're in, that there would be some sort of life skills class. And my research has shown me that a lot of colleges have that, but they're not for actual credits. Well, no college kid wants to take a class for no credit. They'd rather be doing a lot of other things. Sure. So there has just become this tremendous gap. And I liken the way this all kind of evolved to me as what I think maybe Taylor Swift, who's our favorite singer in my house, it comes up with a song and how she would say, it just comes through me. The only way I can describe how I built this business was that I just sat down, I put pen to paper and said, I know that this is so needed. So now I've just got to put it to pen and paper and get out there and start talking about it more.
Sure. And it's something that you've been close to, whether it was your intention at the end of this 20 plus year career to have moved in this direction. And I know it's not the end, but what I'm saying is you didn't necessarily feel like you or intended it to evolve into this, but it is a product of all that you've known and experienced. Let me back up really quickly and just ask you shared with us the students' experience, the emerging adults' experience. What are you hearing on the end of the employers? Are they having grace for these gaps, for the fact that there are no thank you notes that are showing up, or if they are showing up, they're not well written, or they're not on time, or penmanship and spelling is lacking? Do they see it as the world is evolving and maybe we're the ones that need to be okay with this? Or do they see it as like, I'm not hiring somebody that doesn't know how to write a thank you note? Like, what's the mentality on their end?
I love this question. So I was actually just on a call yesterday with an international PR agency, and both of us said we were like totally geeking out on this conversation because they are very much seeing it and they're very frustrated. what I keep saying over and over again, it's not their fault though. So we as the millennials and the boomers and the Gen, like we're all getting frustrated with how their work ethic, their communication, all of that. But yet we're also not willing to show them and train them and teach them what they need to know. And this is how they were raised. And it wasn't anything even parents knew was happening when it was actually happening. So one of my favorite books and one of my favorite teachers right now is, here, I'll put it up. His name is Jonathan Haidt.
Yeah.
So it's called The Anxious Generation. And basically what he says in this book is that in the year 2007, that was when the smartphone was developed. Okay. And any child who was going through puberty in 2007 is now entering the workforce. And we basically put them on Mars and we didn't even know it. And we've relied so heavily on it. And there has been no real research. Now he's coming out, which was interesting timing for when I started this business, but he has made I think in California, actually, he has made such a change that schools are no longer letting phones into the schools or the classrooms or whatever it is. But with that being said, now it is spilling over into companies and leaders, executive level, they are getting frustrated. Now, and I believe this wholeheartedly, the only way everyone can get along is by teaching each other and communicating in a healthy way to say, okay, I see how you do this, Gen Z. This is how I did this, boomer. But perhaps we can come up with a solution together on what works for you and what works for me. Now, unfortunately, that's like rainbows and butterflies that I'm talking about. But the reality is there's never been a time where there's more generations sitting under the same roof or, remote or whatever it may be together. And the boomers, they would sit in their jobs from beginning, of their career to the end of their career. My dad was an accountant from 22 to he still is at 75. My mom was a teacher. That was how they were raised. Now, my generation is we rely on our phones. We don't look at the workday as just a 9 to 5. We're always kind of working and thinking, and that's really what's embedded in us. Gen Z is very much trying to protect their mental health and talk about boundaries that, the other generations some of our community has no interest in even engaging in that conversation. But the reality is it needs to start happening. So, that would be my answer. In terms of employers, it is very much evident. It is very much something that they're struggling with, but they haven't really truly implemented training and structure. And I think it's also because, I don't really know a whole lot of other people out there right now doing this, particularly focusing on this generation, Gen Z.
Sure. It seems to me like it's a matter of time. It was sort of like, I think if we think of movements in, corporate movements where they've had to pay attention to women, where they've had to pay attention to DEI, it ends up being forced from the outside in. We're demanding this as employees.
Yes.
It's not just a social experiment. It's how we actually are choosing to live. And at some point, there's going to be enough of the population is going to, whether it's, Z or even young millennials, that's moving into the workforce and taking on more managerial positions. And we're going to see a shift there. It seems like you're a great solution for all those that are frustrated. You're a great solution for the corporations who are like, we don't have the bandwidth to try and manage this, but we know we have to because we need people. We need talent in seats. So how do we do this in a way that's meaningful and good for our bottom line? Oh, there's Heather Redisch, right? And then for those who are coming out of college, I have a daughter who is a rising senior in college. You're a great tool for somebody like that. And even if they know some of the things, they don't know all of the things, right? They just don't know what they don't know. And we as parents don't know what they need to know. Somebody like you has made it literally her business to figure out where those gaps are, where the white spaces are, and you're filling in the blanks, so to speak. What did you do? You talked about your human resource background. What specifically were you doing? Were you internal and hiring?
I've done both. I was on an agency side, working with clients, filling roles, which is what I still do today because I love it. I've always loved helping companies find talent. So particularly in the tech space has been my bread and butter. But also I then went internally and wanted to become more familiar with internal processes and how culture is managed and all the other types of HR operations I was involved with too. So I like the recruiting, that finding the talent is what makes my heart sing. But I've really enjoyed the people part of a business and helping support them in any way possible, which, with the rise of technology, it has allowed those in the people business to really think about the people rather than as we would been once thought about as paper pushers, because technology has advanced us so much that the paper pushing isn't as necessary anymore. And so we are, in my opinion, I always say the greatest companies, which I've been in tech, they look at HR as true business partners. They have a seat at that table because they have the pulse of the people. And your company is not going to be successful if your people are not feeling supported and engaged and thought about. So
Sure. I have to ask a question that comes up a lot at dinner parties. I'm a Gen Xer. Many of my friends are Gen Xers. And one of the things that I'm hearing more and more is, they're hiring people or trying to hire people that don't want to come into the office. And this is both I think a reflection of a generation and protecting mental health and also what COVID taught us we could do. And conversely, when I talk to my kids, so I told you I have a rising senior, I have a rising sophomore in college as well, and then I have a high schooler, and he totally counts. But in this conversation, I'm talking about the older two, and they say, I do not want to work remotely. I want to be around people. I want to be in an environment where I'm learning, where I'm understanding how teams work together, where I have access and insight to my manager, where I can sort of be more social and not just rely on texts and Zooms and emails. Maybe I should say texts out of there. I don't know how many people are texting in work, but you know what I mean.
Yep.
So what are you seeing and hearing, and how much of that is built into the work that you're doing or having to train companies? Like, look, you're going to have to build in some sort of time away. Or are you training on the flip side? Are you training or telling or coaching and teaching these Gen Zers, hey, you're going to have to accept that it's not all from home, and we're going to have to negotiate that this company is not trying to do damage to your mental health. They're caring for their bottom line. How do we find the intersection?
It's a delicate balance.
Yeah.
It's a delicate balance. And I will say there's a lot of research right now that's showing that these rising grads are really becoming more and more interested in trades. So pilots are on a major rise right now. The kids don't want to be behind computers, and they've been behind them their whole lives. So they are going into construction and things that, professions that you can really be using your hands and being fully involved physically too. So it's becoming an interesting evolution. Even the other day, I was reading an article about like plumbers have become, they've been waiting for there to be some sort of interest back into an industry. And here it's happening because of this exact, what you're discussing. Here's what I say. The United States doesn't know moderation of anything. We've never known what moderation is, right? So we only know how to take things to the, if it's a 1 out of 10, it's definitely a 15. And we don't have those boundaries, and we've never been able to truly healthily maintain them. When COVID came around, yes, it did create this thought and ability, which is, no, you're not sitting home watching Oprah and eating bonbons all day long. You are actually quite productive at home. Sometimes even more productive, because when you go into the office, you end up chit-chatting the day away and not getting through everything that you want. So my personal feeling is a 3-day in the office, 2-day at home is a beautiful marriage of how you can juggle everything in your life, particularly with the commutes. But I appreciate the fact that entry-level grads want to be on site more if they do. And I believe that if that is the case, then your manager should help in nurturing that, because the truth is a lot happens, when you are
there
physically present. Yes, sure. A lot happens. However, we also just know the burnout of Gen X and millennials, and we know that that type of burnout is also not healthy. So again, I'm not a big fan of remote. I think that it excludes you and it makes you get in your head a little bit too much. Also depends on the kind of lifestyle you have. And a hybrid is a beautiful best of both worlds where you can, sometimes you just want to be able to take care of things at home and focus and then also go to the office. But I'm definitely, without a shadow of a doubt, seeing recent grads wanting to get into an office and not be working remotely.
Yeah. And those are both students that were smack in the middle of COVID and were in front of computers and isolated a lot. So that's no surprise. On the flip side, I think they, I'll speak as a parent. I want my kids to be at the very least in a hybrid situation because I want them to learn those social skills as adults. Right.
Correct.
And I want them to learn how to interface. And we know from experience that so much of life and opportunity and open doors happen outside of the 9 to 5 time, right? Like,
absolutely.
It's when you're at the water cooler and like, hey, I was thinking about this. You want to give that a shot? Or you're going to lunch or dinner, or casual conversation is often where opportunities are born.
Yes.
And I think there's no way you can replicate that in a Zoom when everything is scheduled and you don't have those sort of nuanced opportunities for organic conversation and relationship to build. Did you know that the real cause of osteoporosis isn't bad genetics? It's not your age either. Bone loss is actually largely caused by low collagen levels. In fact, 90% of your bone mass is made out of collagen protein. The problem is, as we age, we produce less and less of it. Starting around the age of 30, we produce 1% to 2% less collagen every single year, which is why so many people struggle with bone density as they get older. So if you're over the age of 50, man or woman, supplementing with collagen is one of the most important things you can do to build stronger bones and joints. But here's the deal, not just any collagen product will do. There are 28 different types of collagen out there. Type 1 is what we need for bone density, and type 3 is crucial for muscle health. So if building stronger bones is something you care about, stop wasting your hard-earned money on inferior supplements and start adding more types 1 and 3 collagen into your diet. To begin your bone health journey, go to getnativepath.com/Liberty for a special 45% off discount for being a Liberty Road listener. Again, go to getnativepath.com/Liberty for a special 45% off just for listening. I'm glad to hear you're in, your game for the hybrid.
Oh yeah, no, very, very much so. And to your point about the social skills is, even little things like knowing when to approach somebody, like from a physical standpoint, do they look like they're so deep in work that is it appropriate just to pop into their cube or their office? Or should you, perhaps send them an email and say, hey, when you get a second, would love to chat with you, or a Slack or something like that. But they, again, if they're remote, they don't know that, right? And so yes, I couldn't agree with you more on that.
I have to ask, and if our audience was made up of Gen Zers, I would be more sensitive, but I'm going to just be more direct since I know that our audience is made up of mainly the parents. Yes. It seems like some of this is a lack of respect for authority or elders, not to sound like I'm antiquated myself, but I think I know in our home, like that's a value that person earned just by living longer, at least your attention, right? Now, if they're a jerk, they're a jerk, but it's both and, right? Yep. They are also older than you and they deserve a modicum of respect, but you don't have to like them. They can be a jerk, right? We're not saying blindly follow every person that's older than you or a figure of authority.
Yeah.
How much of that are you seeing or not seeing? Maybe it's just me.
No, it is not you. So I have been saying that they're not intimidated. Like I used to be intimidated by those who I looked up to and admired. I felt an immediate kind of intimidation. And sometimes in my mind, I was so intimidated. I was like, I really want to get to know that person because I feel so intimidated by them that maybe if I got to know them a little better, I wouldn't feel such a way. There's no intimidation. Again, I think that from a social perspective, this is what I compare it to, which is something that we did not grow up with. And I think it's part of it is social media has made it so easy to troll people and to get, keyboard courageous on what your thoughts are. And so you can spew out whatever you think, no matter how mean or hurtful it is to anybody that has a public profile, right? Or that is sharing information. And I see it on my own personal social media. And so this just happened actually, like within the last few months with one of my daughters. She was on a group chat and one of them did not agree with the rest of the girls. And instead of them quieting down and, letting that person give their opinion, they all just started ganging up.
Sure.
Because they were group thinking and there was one that wasn't thinking that way. And we didn't have that. The most that we could gang up in terms of is maybe on the school playground if there was something, but at least the school was managing and seeing that. Or what conference? I mean, you couldn't conference that many people in, right? But here we are with 20 kids on a text message and they're learning so early what the gang up looks like. And that then directly moves into what their communication skills are for elders. And even with teachers now, the teachers don't necessarily feel as respected, but the teacher-student relationship has also really changed. Lots of students have their teachers' cell phone numbers and text them. And when I was growing up, my mom never had our teachers' numbers. I have all my kids' teachers' numbers. Like there's just gray. It's become so much more gray. And so yeah, they do not have that. They do not feel intimidated by others who are elder than them. They feel sometimes that they're smarter than them, and it's frustrating.
Yeah, it's interesting that what they've learned in terms of speaking boldly online has translated to speaking boldly offline.
Yeah,
and I think something you said that we should all be mindful of is just because they're socially awkward in person doesn't mean they're intimidated. And that can be a little confusing for us, right? Like if we're interviewing somebody, we might mistake their social awkwardness or their missing social cues because they're so used to engaging online as, oh, they're just intimidated. It's because I'm older. It's because they don't really know what they're doing. And then be shocked when they act differently, when they act boldly. So it's interesting. I think, again, it's the both and.
It is the both and.
Yeah. And that can be complicated for the adult and for those who are adulting. Really quickly, tell us, what are your solutions? What does Heather Redisch provide for us, for the student, for those of us who maybe work for a company or in HR or even have a small business? How do we utilize you? And do you have something for parents or is that down the road? Just let us know how we can engage with you.
So I have a monthly webinar called Adulting101 Masterclass, and that really covers a wide range of topics from how to interview, which even if your child has a job or not, they're going to be interviewing many times in their life. So a lot of kids will get jobs on campus they're still going to need those skills to find their next job, right? So it's interviewing, it's career development, it's understanding how to properly network on LinkedIn, network in real life, going to networking events. I talk about, financial literacy, and that when you are being offered a $50,000 job, you're not making $50,000, you're actually making 35.
Yeah.
And then you have to pay for your benefits, and here's what a deductible is, and this is what your copay is. And breaking that down, and we talk about budgets and how to break down a salary for a budget in order to move out, and what rents are across the United States. And it's really looking at the adulting holistically. Also, time management is hard for Gen Z. So figuring out some tools and tips on how to handle it, especially because they are so depressed that they have to be somewhere from 9 to 5 every day, that they've never had to be somewhere like that. And so their time is now they're frustrated or feeling sad that they don't have that time for themselves. And so that is the webinar as a whole. Is it goes over a myriad of different topics. I talk about taxes, like don't let April 14th, or April 15th come your way. Oh, my dad would be so mad at me that I just messed up that date. April 15th, don't let April 15th come your way. And you didn't take out money for your paychecks to pay for it, because now you're going to spend a couple $1,000s in paying the government. Like all these things that your credit card paying off. Anyways, so that's my Adulting 101 webinar that I do monthly. I also go into companies and provide communication and etiquette training for, it is for Gen Z. I do feel like, most generations could use a refresher
of this,
on how to be properly communicating. And then in terms of parents, that is my current kind of work right now is how I can best support them. When I'm doing coaching, I do coaching one-on-one for kids as well. Typically, I will build in coaching sessions for the parent too, just to make sure that if I'm supporting the kid and I'm getting them all, locked and loaded, that the parents are also feeling like they too are supported and they know how to best support their kid. So I do it in that fashion, but I haven't done it in a more grandiose fashion yet. I'm working on that. Lots going on.
We're going to have you in the membership, because I know lots of, in our insiders membership, because I know lots of people who'd have lots of questions for you. So
wonderful.
We'll get that whole thing started.
Love it.
It's great to hear your story, because I think for our listeners who are considering kind of what's next for them, to listen to, and that's why this podcast exists, to listen to stories of somebody who has looked at their history, looked at what lights them up now, and figured out how to merge those things with their talents and kind of whatever white space they see in the world, whatever gap. And you're a perfect example of that. You took your history, your tenured history in HR as in the kind of recruiting space, looked at what the issues were where people needed support and help. And then as a parent too, you're seeing that gap, right? You're seeing it, and it's something that you're helping to build for the future. Yeah. When you were coming together, or when all of this was coming together, did you see that through line? Was it clear for you, or was it almost an aha moment in retrospect?
It was a total, I was driving in my car, whereas I do my best thinking.
Sure.
And it was a total aha moment to me. I just like how I feel like the business came through me like a song, like this is the time. It is the time to really have these conversations. And so, no, there was no, I actually was talking about, like, what do you want to be when you grow up? This was not, in my plan of what I want to be when I grow up. But I've always felt this strong desire to coach and mentor and help in some capacity. And that's why I loved when people were interviewing, coaching them on how to be their best selves in interviewing. And so, no, this has been kind of a brand new, kind of out of nowhere. I wasn't really planning on doing that this year. I've got, 3 girls and juggling teenage them, and it's horrendous. So
it's a lot.
It's got its bright moments too, but it's real hard right now. So starting this new business was not in the cards, but it's happening. And I just keep coming back to that. I did want to just say one thing. I just wanted to highlight one thing, because I do get questions from parents of, well, how can I best support my child who is now at this age? And I don't know if you had seen there was this chart that went around, a graph about how parents are going with their kids to interviews and they're sitting in the lobby and, And it was like, it made it like to Bill Maher and to, I think, Jon Stewart. Like, people kept posting this one particular, it was by Intelligent, and I can share it with you after this. But here's what I have to say about that. We are just so accustomed to doing a lot for our children. Mm-hmm. I don't know how it all happened for our generation, Gen Z and the millennials, but somehow we do a lot more than our parents did. And I think this is a muscle that just needs to be worked. And it's acknowledging the fact that your kid can actually do it for themselves. Whether it's making that phone call to make their doctor's appointment that they don't want to make and sitting next to them and helping them the first time around, but making them do it. I mean, I have had several conversations with my own daughter who will be like, can you make me, a manicure? And I'm like, no, you're going to call. No, I don't want to. I want to do it online. I'm like, no. If you want to go, I want you to call. I want you to say, hi, my name is Blake. I would like to make an appointment, but they know how to do everything through the computer and booking online that they don't want to have these independent conversations. And that is the one thing I just keep repeating to all parents is just try and take that step back. Give them a little bit more than you. And I know you want to do it with them. And maybe you want the experience for your own personal self. And it's your first child. So like you're excited to go apartment shopping and you're excited, but let them do these things for themselves, and do not negotiate your child's offer for a job. Never, ever, ever, ever do that. I've had that. I had a parent.
Wow.
I had a parent call me to negotiate their child's offer. And I said to that parent, I'm sure you're trying to do this in the best interest of your child, but I'm going to do this in the best interest of your child and say they need to negotiate their own salary.
Sure.
This is their life now, and they need to handle these conversations. So,
and you're robbing your child of the opportunity to become an adult. I heard you telling, I think I read it on your website, but you tell the story of going to New York and your parents sort of knowing that, gosh, if she just came back to Chicago, this would be so much easier. But what that experience did for you and how it emboldened you and empowered you, no matter how difficult it may have been and how much money you had to spend to live in the city and all those things, that we need those moments. It reminds me of Angela Duckworthy's book, the Grit book. What is it called? What is that book called? Something Grit. We'll have it in the show notes. We'll also include in the show notes the book that you mentioned. Tell us what that is again, because I was going to ask you.
Oh, it's called The Anxious Generation by Jonathan Haidt. And he's making waves right now.
Yes, he sure is.
And it's great.
Yeah. Last thing I want to ask you, and thank you for sharing that tip. That was one of the questions that I had. So thank you for that. How has this particular venture, how has the work that you're doing now, the Adulting 101 Masterclass, how has that liberated you, Heather Redisch?
It's my own. It's my own. It's not my husband's. It's not my kids. It's something, it has felt more liberating to me developing this business than anything I've ever done in my life. It's something I'm so passionate about. It consumes my mind, but it's okay that it consumes my mind because it's mine. And everything that I'm putting towards this is out of true love and passion for the gap right now that's going on in the world. And so that's the only way I can describe it, is that there's something really spectacular about having something that's just your own and that you can make the decisions on. And listen, I have mentors and people that I highly respect and love to talk to and need. But ultimately, it's mine, and I'm really proud of it. So.
Well, you should be. And thank you for acknowledging all those mentors and people, because it sends a message to all of us listening that we don't get here alone.
Oh, no.
But it is so liberating. And what struck me as you were talking about your own liberation in this is that the work that you are doing liberates others, but you first had to liberate yourself. It is very much the airplane talk of put the mask on yourself before you put it on the person next to you. I'm so glad you're doing the work that you're doing. Thank you, Heather. Thank you for coming on the podcast and sharing it with us.
Me.
Of course.
Thank you, Netta. I really appreciate it.
Of course. And Liberty listeners, thank you guys for hanging out with me and with Heather. And we'll talk to you guys next week. Bye for now. Liberty Road is broadcast on all platforms: Apple Podcast, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Podcast, and more. If you like what you've heard, please follow, rate, and review Liberty Road on Apple Podcast and Spotify. It helps us to know if these episodes are inspiring and equipping you to move into your middle third with intention. Liberty Road is created by executive producer Netta Jones, supervising producer Elizabeth Wyndham, producer Julia Wyndham, and music by Jack Jones.
To make switching to the new Boost Mobile risk-free, we're offering a 30-day money-back guarantee.
So why wouldn't you switch from Verizon or T-Mobile?
Because you have nothing to lose. Boost Mobile is offering a 30-day money-back guarantee.
No, I asked why wouldn't you switch from Verizon or T-Mobile?
Oh.
Wouldn't.
Because you love wasting money as a way to punish yourself because your mother never showed you enough love as a child?
Whoa. Easy there.
Yeah.
Applies to online activations. Requires port in and auto pay. Customers activating in stores may be charged non-refundable activation fees.
Discover Hydro, the best kept secret in fitness. Hydro is the state-of-the-art at-home rower that engages 86% of your muscles, delivering the ultimate full-body workout in just 20 minutes. From advanced to beginner, Hydro has over 500 classes shot worldwide and taught by Olympians and world-class athletes. For a 30-day risk-free trial, go to hydro.com and use code ROW450 to save $450 on a Hydro Pro rower. That's HYDROW.com, code ROW450.
Make this new school year an opportunity for your kids to learn important life skills with Greenlight. Greenlight is a debit card and money app for families where kids learn how to save, invest, and spend wisely, while parents keep an eye on kids' money habits. Greenlight also helps families get into their fall routine with a chores feature that lets parents assign chores and pay kids allowance when they check